Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This was day 11/11 of the Trump administration. We are talking about dual stories. The State of the Union address we just witnessed, hard to bring together in one cogent sentence. Equally difficult to explain is what is still unfolding in Iowa. Steve Kornacki is back at the board. 24 hours ago, we were talking about when are we going to get results from Iowa?
And we're still asking, when are we going to get results from Iowa? When are we going to get more results? Before we went into that State of the Union speech, 62% of precincts were reporting, 62% still reporting. We have heard some things from the Iowa Democratic Party about more votes coming in. Those suggestions have not panned out. That has been a recurring theme these last 24 hours. So it is still at 62%. I should make very clear here, the decision desk here at NBC is not characterizing anybody as the winner or any single person as the leader here in terms of the state delegate equivalents or that popular vote, that initial preference. You have Buttigieg leading Sanders by 25 state delegate equivalents. And, of course, you have Sanders right now leading by 3 points in that initial preference. We've been talking about this tonight. Why does Buttigieg have that advantage in delegates when he is losing the initial preference by 3 points, when he's also losing the reallocated preference? Sanders is also leading that. What you see here, it looks like I sort of made a mistake or something here. These are all marks, right, marked off in yellow here. These are counties that Buttigieg has won or is leading in right now. You see, there are a lot of them all throughout the state. These are all counties where their share of the delegates statewide are greater than their share of the turnout. So we keep talking about this, how there is a bit of an advantage, especially in some rural counties where you get more bang for your buck in terms of delegates than necessarily raw votes. And so you see all of these counties here. Buttigieg is leading in all of them right now, and it explains how he's able to take the lead in state delegates despite trailing right now in that initial preference. So we'll continue to see. We're not giving up hope tonight to get some more vote in this thing, but that pattern we've been talking about, Buttigieg in the delegates, Sanders in the initial preference, we'll see if that continues or if we get a clear winner here in this final 38%.
Steve, I mean this completely absent snark. We're talking about individual initial preference. Isn't that what we call, in non-caucus states, going to vote?
That will be the argument that the Sanders campaign will make. You know, if this holds, I'll put it up right here. They'll say, hey, look, this is your clearest indication yet of what people intended to do with one choice in the Iowa caucuses. And they'll probably say, hey, look, they've been doing the Iowa caucuses for 50 years. Started back in 1972. And in 1972, this was a very convoluted process that only a few people took part in. And they came up with this very complicated state delegate equivalent formula. And they had conventions that played out over a period of months to get to that. And I think if you look back and you said, as an academic exercise, if 50 years ago you'd said, hey, we got a choice here. We can do state delegate equivalents, or we can have you raise your hand when you show up at the caucus. Which would you rather have as a measure? I think there might have been a serious discussion there about which one of those is a better instrument of measuring support in this thing. So the Sanders campaign, if this holds, is going to say more people went out to these caucus sites and decided they wanted to support Sanders than Buttigieg. And they also right now will have the talking point of saying, even when given a second choice at this point, even when given a second choice, Sanders still leading Buttigieg. We'll see if that holds. Buttigieg leads that delegate formula, but the two measures there of first and second round support, Sanders leads.
Thank you, Steve.
We are going to be talking with a top national surrogate for the Sanders campaign in just a moment. I do want to tell you just one quick piece of news before we go to her. This has just been reported. We were talking about that sort of dramatic visual that we had right at the end of the President's State of the Union address, in which Nancy Pelosi I'll demonstrate, took her copy of the speech and tore it, and then went page by page and tore it in half. As Speaker Pelosi left the floor, a couple of NBC News reporters asked her what she thought of the speech, and she told them, quote, "I tore it up." She was asked why she tore it up, and she said, quote, "because it was the courteous thing to do, considering the alternative."
It is Wednesday, the 5th of February of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid me of this meddlesome Wahhabi types? You know, I have been getting just slammed by Saudi Arabian troll bots for daring to criticize a murderous, brutal regime. Of course, you know, if you're a loyal subject of the royal Saudi family, you wouldn't think that they're a murderous regime. You'd think that they're just doing God's work. And so it's kind of funny. I have all these troll bots who are women journalists in Saudi Arabia, pretty much defending the Saudi royal family for, dismembering Khashoggi. It came under the auspices of the Sauds are now finally going to allow women to be in their military forces, and so it begged the question that one of my followers, that I also follow, made mention of, they now have the freedom to go kill Yemeni women and girls. Oh, did that cause the troll bots to come out? So I just, made mention that do the Saudi women get to dismember Khashoggi or a WAPO journalist generally? Can they dismember a WAPO journalist generally without a male chaperone, or do they have to have a male chaperone to do that still? So I'm just curious. Now, of course, they have gotten a lot of rights. They can now drive themselves to the site to dismember Khashoggi. And so I got that going for me. It is amazing. I refer to myself as just a small-time internet radio personality. Well, I would have called myself a poet with a capital P, but look how far I've fallen. So it just beggars another question. The Sauds have so much money, they're going to go after a person like me for criticizing the regime as being a murderous, brutal regime? Who am I? Pretty darn funny if you ask me. Now, some people might say that I might have put my life in danger, and I am well aware of that. I lived in Berkeley. I saw what would happen to people who would criticize the Saud royal family. You don't think it happens? It does. It does. Some of these Saud kids don't get spirited away out of the country because, they just happen to run over somebody in a crosswalk and they're trying to flee the law. No, sometimes they pick them up and beat the crap out of them because they said something untoward towards the Saud royal family. Saw it right in Sproul Hall, by the way. Or not Sproul Hall, Sproul Plaza. Out in the open. Yeah. Dragged that kid away, and I knew the kid, too. And he had been saying some untoward things about the Saud royal family. Bad for him. So I know exactly what they're capable of. And, but, I'm an American, I'm an American. I have the attitude like, okay, bring it on. At my own detriment, probably. But I cannot stand journalists being dismembered for any reason. And for a troll bot to claim that they're a woman and a journalist and a patriarchal monarchy, give me a break. Do you think I'm as much of a dimwit as someone who would vote for Trump? Apparently they think that's what America is now. We're a bunch of dimwit Trump voters. All of us. Yeah, I got this argument like, oh, well, you like killed people at Abu Ghraib, and Gina Haspel this and Gina Haspel that, and I know exactly, I know. Except the only difference is that we hate Gina Haspel, and we're trying to do something about it, and have been. And we went out in the streets, in the millions, to protest the Bush crime family lying us into war. I want to know what kind of protests that we got to hear about in Saudi Arabia for whatever was the grievance against the Saud royal family. We didn't hear about it except for the beheadings. As a lesson, to keep your mouth shut. So I got that going for me today, which is nice. Oh, hey! Speaking of which, have they finally released all the numbers in the Iowa caucus? This is what gets me. The media's complaining they don't have these numbers within 24 hours. You know, in California, they don't certify elections sometimes for weeks, if not a month or more. Come on. Everybody wants everything instantaneous. That's why, we got to have a computer do it, so we can have it instantaneous. Okay, and what happens when you get, the app involved? Yeah, WhatsApp is right. What the F happened? What the F app? Oh, my gosh. So, paper ballots, mark them in pen, first of all, and count them by hand. I think that would be appropriate. We can do it on the precinct level. We did it for a long time. I mean, it's not as if those numbers are so overwhelming that we can't do it. We can. So let this also be a lesson about caucuses. I'll reiterate. You run with the caucuses, you're going to trip on the steps. And steps are spelled with 2 P's and an ES, just so you know. So let's move to, a regular voting format, like a primary. And maybe what would be nice, I don't know, maybe have a format so that when you look at a high school gym of caucusing members, that, what's the term now? I'm trying to think of the term. It's like one of these like liberal terms. Oh yeah, diversity. I can't believe Iowa is that white. I mean, Joy Reid found some black people. No one else could, but Joy did. They're there. Oh, God. Probably the reason we can't see them is because it's flyover country, right? It's the heartland. And everybody knows the heartland is so white it blinds you to the reality of things. Let that be a lesson. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, while the Iowa caucus votes trickled in, Nancy ripped up the State of the Union hoax. All right. Trump was on a witch hunt. She ripped up the hoax. And everybody's talking about it, and they're not really talking about Trump and his lies. Well, they are, by inference. But Nancy is trending, and Trump just is going crazy. At last count, I think he's almost to 40 tweets already. And oh my God, Pompeo, as an aside, Pompeo posted a tweet with Lisa. Yes, from The Simpsons, Lisa Simpson, from the great episode of Lisa Goes to Washington. I mean, it's one of the most famous Simpson episodes ever. And Pompeo posted Lisa ripping up her speech. The speech that she wrote, that she won a great award and got to go to Washington, D.C. to give this speech about how great America is and democracy. And she saw the abject corruption, and she saw a congressman take a bribe, and it destroyed her faith in democracy. And she ripped up her speech over that. Pompeo, let that be a lesson to all of us. They always show us who they are. Indeed. On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. After a few unsuccessful tries already, Kevin McCarthy wants to investigate Adam Schiff for trying to save America. And that travesty just will not stand. Trump's exaggerated great American comeback feels a lot like get back for electing a black president. Twice. And Kansas will drop its fight against a compensation claim from a man who spent 23 years in prison for a double homicide he did not commit, and there was no evidence linking him to the crime whatsoever. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Nigeria's foreign minister was blindsided by Trump's decision, but he is working hard to have the travel ban lifted. And a second butterfly activist has been found murdered a week after the director of the sanctuary was also slain at the UNESCO Heritage Site. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank you, Kelly, for doing that, and so much more as well. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, hopefully you'll then notice our link to our Patreon page, and please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Now more than ever, I know I say that quite often and for a long time, but truly it is true. I forgot to mention, we had an extended power outage yesterday, knocked Netroots Radio off the air for about 4 hours plus. It was 4 hours plus, and we certainly apologize for that. That's an act of God, and I don't know why it went out, but I am set up for alerts, and it could have been worse. It could have been almost 7 to 8 hours that they had projected to get the power back on, and they were able to fix that quite soon. All things considered, happened just before the State of the Union, well, at least coverage of the State of the Union began. I have a little transistor type radio that I was able to pick up the State of the Union on NPR, so I was able to listen to it. But that was an issue somewhat, but even more so than that, I just give the power outage as an FYI. These machines that are subject to electricity have been workhorses, and they need to be replaced soon, if not now. And your generosity has helped us pay our bills and accumulate these funds, albeit a little slowly, to be able to purchase new machinery. And we would be unable to do this without you because of your great generosity, and we thank you. And tell your friends we need more. I'm just being honest. No use beating around the bush now. All right? But truly, thank you for your generosity, and we hope that more of you become recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio. It's simple. Just go to the site and you'll see it. Okay, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more, too. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam because I have to say, I don't trust anybody else to do that right now. So I do it. And it seems only right. And if you follow me there, it's a good idea because I post the show notes and links diary of the show about 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Co's. That's why it's called a diary. That's your first clue. And then after I post it on Daily Co's, I then link it up on social media like at Justice Putnam, and other social media platforms that are automatically put up. Yes, indeed. So look for us there. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. But the most important part of this spiel, outside of the plea for funds, right up there with that is the podcasts. And do pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. And if there's some sort of rating thing, if they ask you to rate, do that, because since in my, infinite wisdom, I decided that, hey, why don't we title this show so that it shows up at the bottom of everybody's search engines? And there's like billions of podcasts out there now. Billions. And so if you rate it, and we get pushed up the search engine protocol. So do that if it asks. Thank you. All right, let's jump into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Oh, did I mention it's Smothered Benedict Wednesdays? Yes, I did. I'm just pandering. Oh, which reminds me, Trump thinks he has a black shield. I mean, this guy panders and patronizes in the same breath. God. I was afraid he was going to start doing the whole State of the Union part where he had the black shield. He was going to do it in blackface. Well, he had the orange pancake makeup on instead, which is almost like blackface. But yeah, he is the great savior of, all those people from the shithole countries that just happen to be here. Damn them. Okay. And the GOP side turned it into a Nuremberg rally. 4 more years, 4 more years. And I don't see Jonathan Turley talking about that lack of decorum. Jonathan Turley. Yeah, look at what Jonathan Turley said about Wilson yelling, "You lie." Yeah, pretty much. He said that Wilson should have done more than just yell, "You lie." That's Turley for you. Well, let's talk about Kevin McCarthy. You know, Kevin McCarthy, the one who said there's two people in Congress that gets paid by Putin, Rohrabacher and Trump. Or not in Congress, but in America. Rohrabacher and Trump. And now Kevin McCarthy, oh my God. He's got to figure out how all of this untoward accusations of foreign power helping Trump came about. And we got to find that and root it out and pretty much put their heads on a pike. Yep. Well, Josh Israel from the American Independent brings us this story. I guess I told it already. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has spent the last several months decrying congressional investigations, but now he's calling for one of his own. Well, he has to, because Lindsey's in the Senate calling for his. After President Trump is acquitted, let's get to the bottom of how this nightmare started, McCarthy wrote on Twitter yesterday, Tuesday. And I should note, once again, the NetRiz Radio style manual really precludes me from referring to Trump with the P word. But this is out of McCarthy's mouth, and I have to give it a little bit of journalistic integrity. Just a little. He also shared part of an interview with right-wing radio host Mark Levin. Yes, that stable intellect, Mark Levin, in which McCarthy demanded an investigation to, quote, get to the bottom of the lies of House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff that put this country through the nightmare. Yeah. Once again, like the Saud royal family and all their paid troll bots, McCarthy thinks we're as stupid as the dimwits who vote for Trump. He does. He counts on it. Back to the article. McCarthy's enthusiasm for new House investigations seems to fly in the face of his rhetoric over the past several months because he's a pandering Philistine too. I don't know, Philistine? In November, he called the impeachment inquiry a sham and a waste of time and money. But Benghazi, for how many years? Years. They're still talking about investigating her for Benghazi. In fact, I think they are. Last month, he complained of the costly, never-ending investigation of Trump and the opportunity cost of the impeachment. Yeah, we're in the impeachment age. the GOP keeps telling us. Impeachment age. The only people who are partisan impeachers are you-know-who, and it ain't us. The sad part is that America is so much bigger than this, he said. Well, I have him crying. You deserve a Congress that actually focuses on real issues. And I just love the fact that the women Congress critters stood up in white. And Turley got upset about this, too, and chanted H.R. 3 when Trump said, get a bill to my desk and I'll sign it. Well, you know, it's in Mitch McConnell's graveyard. You know your friend Moscow Mitch. And Kevin, you may not want to open this up, because we'll find out that it's not just Vlad paying Rohrabacher and Trump, but you got Deripaska and Firtash paying Lindsey, paying Moscow Mitch McConnell, paying everybody in the GOP caucus in the Senate and the House. And Kevin, Firtash and Deripaska are paying you too. Josh Bolt, Calvin Woodward, and Hope Yen of the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The great American comeback Donald Trump claimed in his State of the Union speech drew on falsehoods about U.S. energy supremacy, health care, and the economy, as well as distortions about his predecessor's record. Yeah, his great American comeback sounded, as I said, a lot like Get Back for electing a black president twice. In arguing, in essence, that he has made America great again, Trump took credit for an energy boom that actually began under Obama, in an assertion he recycled from his last State of the Union address. He inflated manufacturing gains, misrepresented policy on migrant detention, and glossed over a rate of economic growth that has yet to reach the scale he promised. Now let's look at some of the statements he made last night and how they compare with the facts. On immigration, Trump said, before I came into office, if you showed up illegally on our southern border and were arrested, you were simply released and allowed into our country, never to be seen again. My administration has ended catch and release. If you come illegally, you will now be promptly removed. Wow, immigrants are like fish that you catch with a hook. The facts. Not true. Under previous administrations, Mexicans were quickly returned back over the U.S.-Mexican border, while others were held in detention until they were deported. Some migrants from other countries were released into the interior of the U.S. to wait out their immigration cases, but not to ever be seen ever again. And despite Trump's claims that all migrants are now promptly removed, there is a 1 million immigration court case backlog, which means many migrants wait up to 3 years before a court hearing. In an icebox baby gulag by chance? Before a judge will determine whether someone is deported. And after a judge rules a migrant deported, travel papers must be obtained, which often leads to further delays. So on oil and gas, Trump said, thanks to our bold regulatory reduction campaign, the U.S. has become the number one producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world by far. God, this guy. Now, the facts are that Trump is taking credit for a U.S. oil and gas production boom that started under Obama, and I got to say, a lot of us were not happy about it. And the U.S. Energy Information Administration says the U.S. has been the world's top natural gas producer since 2009. the top petroleum hydrocarbon producer since 2013, and top crude oil producer since 2018. So I guess you can say that, he's made some more crude come out of the ground. Black gold. Now, on the jobs and economy, Trump said in 8 years under the last administration, over 300,000 working-age people dropped out of the workforce. In just 3 years of my administration, 3.5 million working-age people have joined the workforce. Woohoo! And the GOP stood up en masse and yelled, 4 more years, USA! Like a Nuremberg rally. Well, the facts are that Trump is being misleading with numbers to tarnish his predecessor's record. It's not clear what he means by working age, but the total size of the U.S. labor force shows that Trump is just wrong. During the 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency, the labor force rose by over 5 million. And that was according to the Labor Department, by the way, not just some number that Trump made up. The improvement reflected a rebounding economy from the Great Recession. Remember that? When the big financial institutions of our country tanked our economy. And Obama set the ship of state right and floated it once again. But Trump's going to take credit for it. As the unemployment rate has fallen, more people are finding it attractive to work and join the labor force. This has enabled the labor force to climb by an impressive 4.86 million in just 3 years under Trump. Now, when he brought up drug prices, this is where it really irked my ire. And I'm glad that our side, not all, but our side stood up and pointed with 3 fingers and chanted H.R. 3. What was that about? Well, Trump said for the first time in 51 years, the cost of prescription drugs actually went down. Well, the facts are prices for prescription drugs have edged down, but that is driven by declines for generics. Prices for brand name medications are still going up. Nonpartisan government experts at the Department of Health and Human Services reported last year that prices for pharmacy prescriptions went down by 1% in 2018, the first such price drop in 45 years. But the department said the last time retail prescription drug prices declined was in 1973 when they went down by 0.2%. And Trump said, hey, if you want like health care and you want to save on prescription drug prices, get a bill to my desk and I'll sign it. The bill is in Moscow Mitch's graveyard, Donnie. H.R. 3. Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Kansas is dropping its fight against the compensation claim for a man who spent 23 years in prison for a double homicide before a judge vacated convictions that were secured even though no physical evidence or motive tied him to the crimes. Attorney General Derek Schmidt said in an Associated Press interview that his office made the decision after reviewing 900 pages of documents from Lamont McIntyre's attorney that had not been provided to it previously. He also said an ongoing Kansas Bureau of Investigation review of the 1994 crimes for which McIntyre, from Kansas City, Kansas, was charged, had turned up new information. Schmidt said his office will work with McIntyre's attorney on a settlement to present to the Shawnee County District Court judge. He said that under a 2018 Kansas law, McIntyre is likely to receive $1.5 million from the state, about $65,000 for each year he spent in prison, plus money to cover attorney's fees and other expenses. McIntyre's case was one of several that prompted the law requiring the state to compensate victims of wrongful convictions, and Schmidt, a Republican, had received bipartisan criticism for resisting McIntyre's compensation claim while agreeing to two others. McIntyre was 17 in 1994 when he was arrested for the killings of 21-year-old Danielle Quinn and 34-year-old Donald Ewing, who were shot in broad daylight. Schmidt, the prosecutor, said that because we knew there was evidence that was never placed in front of a court before we just signed off on a claim, we had an obligation to the new court to collect and review all the evidence. We've now done that, and this new evidence clears McIntyre. So they're going to drop their claim, and he may get his $1.5 million. I think he should get more. All right, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the January 2020 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some science and technology stories from around the globe, compiled by assistant news editor Sarah Lewin Fraser. From Morocco, a single-file line of traveling trilobites, all facing the same direction, were caught in a sediment avalanche 480 million years ago. Scientists uncovered the ancient arthropods in a formation they described as similar to modern-day migrating spiny lobsters. From the U.S., Alaska's northern fur seals are gathering in large numbers on Bogoslav Island, the tip of an active volcano that last erupted in 2017. More than 36,000 pups may have been born on the island in 2019 amid mud-spewing geysers. From Israel, researchers found that inhabitants of central Israel's Kesem Cave, more than 200,000 years ago, likely saved deer leg bones for up to 9 weeks to eat the bone marrow. This could be the earliest known instance of prehistoric humans storing food. From Iran, after lingering for months in areas with no cell service, an eagle, electronically tracked by Russian scientists, flew over Iran, suddenly sending a long backlog of texts with coordinate information, and incurring overwhelming phone bills for the research project. And from Congo, the Congolese giant toad's shape and color scheme imitate the Gaboon viper's head, researchers found, in the first known case of a toad mimicking a dangerous snake. Its alter ego has the longest fangs and most venom of any known snake species. That was Quick Hits by Sarah Lewin Fraser.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Donald Trump's idea of a good farm program seems to be hee-haw. On a recent trip to Wisconsin, he drew guffaws from the state's hard-hit dairy farmers by proclaiming that, thanks to his policies, the farm economy was looking good. We're over the hump, he gloated. Perhaps the Donald thought that farmers are rubes, unable to do simple math. But those dairy farmers were painfully aware that it cost them $1.90 to produce a gallon of milk, but the processing giants that control the milk market are paying them only $1.35 a gallon. That 55-cent a gallon loss quickly adds up to a huge loss of income and a devastating loss of farm families. Wisconsin lost 638 dairy farms last year and another 551 so far this year. Far from over the hump, farm prices have been further depressed by Trump's tariff clash with China. U.S. dairy sales to China fell by 54% in just the first half of this year. Meanwhile, monopoly power is crushing prices. An $8 billion behemoth named Dean Foods now controls 90% of Wisconsin's milk market, empowering it to commit daylight robbery, blatantly stealing farmers' product and farms. Yet, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue, the one national official who's supposed to stand up for farmers, nonchalantly kissed them off, smugly declaring it natural that the big devour the small. So, he professes, there's nothing he can do for family operators except tell them to go out of agriculture. Jim Hightower saying, time for a change. One who is offering a path to a revitalized family farm-based food system is Senator Elizabeth Warren. Download a summary of her comprehensive proposal for a new farm economy at elizabethwarren.com/plans/new farm economy.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day that Ida Bremen was killed while she stood up for the rights of working people in Rochester, New York. Ida was born in Russia to a Jewish family. She came to the United States fleeing persecution in her homeland. Her family came to Rochester because it was a thriving center of the U.S. garment industry. Seeking a better life, Ida's father joined the Brotherhood of Tailors. In January, garment workers in New York City had gone out on strike. Factory owners in the Big Apple decided to send work to Rochester in an effort to avoid the striking workers. Unions were forbidden in the Rochester garment industry. Union leaders from New York City came to Rochester, asking them to stand up against the factory owners. The workers in Rochester agreed to support the strike, but they wanted union recognition, the 8-hour day, and a pay raise. Ida and her father were among the first to walk off the job. Ida joined picketers in front of a sweatshop on Clifford Street. The picketers were there to protest the shop's workers who were not taking part in the strike. The shop owner, Valentine Sauter, fired a rifle into the crowd of picketers. Ida was struck by the boss's bullet and killed. She was only 18 years old. That night, she was supposed to have her engagement party. The community was outraged. 5,000 people attended her funeral. Mass rallies were held across the area. While no one was ever held accountable for her death, Ida's murder became a rallying cry for the striking workers. They continued to fight until April, when they won the right to join a union.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a tad warmer than yesterday. We should be in the upper 40s, where we were pretty much in the mid to low 40s yesterday. Cloudy conditions prevail currently and will throughout the day, with occasional showers this afternoon. Winds remain light and variable out of the northeast and will remain that way overnight and through tomorrow, where we're expecting a high tomorrow in the mid to upper 50s, with an overnight low in the mid to low 40s. Well. So it looks like rain will be possible about 1 o'clock local time. Our pollen rating is at none. The air quality index is good at 19 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.4 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 85%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and partly cloudy. Paris is 50 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 54 degrees, fair with wind, though I don't know how fair it is when they have a wind advisory at gale force. How fair is that? I want to know. Kyiv is 31 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 26 and fair. Hong Kong is 59 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 42 degrees Fahrenheit and just merely cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Humaira Pamuk of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Nigeria has begun working on a security and information sharing requirements for lifting of a U.S. travel ban on prospective immigrants from the African nation. Nigerian Foreign Minister Jeffrey Onyema said yesterday, Tuesday. Speaking at a joint news conference in Washington with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Onyema said Nigeria was blindsided by the U.S. decision on Friday to add it and 5 other nations to an expanded version of the U.S. visa ban. Because, hey, all of Africa is a shithole country now, don't you know? Donald Trump issued an expanded version of his travel ban on Friday as part of a presidential proclamation, which said Washington would suspend the issuance of visas that can lead to permanent residency from nationals of Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, and Nigeria. Temporary visas for tourists, business people, students, and workers from those nations will not be affected, it said. Yeah, tell the people that are trying to get across the border are getting harassed. Ask them. U.S. officials said the countries failed to meet U.S. security and information sharing standards, which necessitated the new restrictions. We've identified all those requirements, and we had actually started working on all of them, Onyema said. It was very gratifying to come here, speaking to U.S. officials, and to understand more clearly the reasoning behind this. Well, I got to tell you, Mr. Foreign Minister, it's all about racism, xenophobia, and a tenuous grip on power.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Olivia Rosane of EcoWatch brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Two men connected to a famous monarch butterfly reserve in Mexico have been found dead within a week of each other, raising concerns for the safety of environmental activists in the country. Homero Gomez Gonzalez, age 50, who managed the butterfly reserve in Mexico's Michoacan state and campaigned against illegal logging in the butterfly's winter habitat, was found dead in a well on January 29th, as reported here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 3 days later, part-time reserve tour guide Raul Hernandez Romero, age 44, was also found dead on top of a hill in the El Campanero Monarch Butterfly Sanctuary. Gomez Gonzalez managed the El Rosario Sanctuary, which is part of the Monarch Butterfly Biosphere Reserve, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The site, located in forested mountains around 100 kilometers, which is 62 miles, northwest of Mexico City, is where more than half of eastern monarch butterfly colonies spend their winters. The butterflies travel all the way to Canada each spring and then back again in the fall. Because 4 generations of butterflies are born and die during this time, it is unclear how they know how to find their way back, but they do. Gomez Gonzalez, a former logger himself, campaigned to protect the reserve and argued that tourism from the butterfly migration was worth more to the region than illegal logging, and apparently the logger said, no, that's not true. Protect a butterfly and you die. Well, it just goes to show if you protect a butterfly beating its wings, somewhere along the line you're going to wind up dead. Well, that's a sad prognosis, isn't it now? Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. In fact, we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays to commiserate about, well, Donald Trump getting the impeachment articles voted down by the Vichy collaborating GOP. Indeed. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.